Hola Unconventionals, today is 9 de Octubre, that is the 9th of October. It is the Independence Day of Guayaquil, and it is a nationwide protest day here in Ecuador.
And this is our feeble attempt at reporting on this important historical event here in Ecuador.
Yes, JP says feeble because we are not fluent in Spanish, but we are going to do the best we can to understand the situation here in the country.
We thought things were calming down when we posted our video on Saturday because the buses and the taxis were done striking and they were running again.
But unfortunately, things have started back up again, and that's because no resolution was made, and now there is a nationwide protest. So we headed into El Centro earlier today and recorded some video
of the protests. And I'm going to include all of that protest video at the end of this video. Feel free to use it in your videos if you want to. We just ask that you link back to our channel as the original source of it.
We're going to continue to share updates on the current situation, and you might want to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you remain updated.
We want to start off by giving you more background on why these protests are occurring. It's more than just the removal of the gas and diesel fuel subsidies here in Ecuador. There's a lot more to it than just that we've learned about in the past week. This all started with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, demanding austerity measures in order to secure a $4.2 billion loan to Ecuador. A few years ago, you may remember all the protests in Greece about the austerity measures that were put in place there. And at the time, I didn't really understand what austerity meant. And I do now because I've looked it up and I'm living through it. It didn't seem as important to me then because it was so far away. But now I kind of understand a lot more about what these austerity measures are. And basically, it's when a government spends too much money and they are at risk of defaulting on their debt, then the banks come in like the IMF and demand austerity measures, which then helps them ensure that they're going to repay the debt that they owe. So that's what's going on right now. A lot of the austerity measures are generally to remove public spending or reduce public spending, usually in the form of job cuts or reduce social program spending. It can also be tax increases, and those two things are usually used either one or the other or combined to make the government's financials look more attractive to the lenders and to also protect the credit rating. Because if the lenders perceive that the government isn't going to be able to repay the loan, then they lower the credit score, which causes the interest rates to skyrocket. And then that's really bad for the economy, as we can kind of see it's going on in Venezuela right now.
Yeah, the problem is, however, that the president, Moreno, just out of the blue, from what we can tell, implemented these subsidy cuts and a bunch of other things without giving anybody any warning whatsoever. And he was supposed to go through their
National
Assembly, which is their version of Congress, but he didn't do that. So it's our interpretation that he basically enacted what we consider to be an executive order, and
without going through the proper channels.
Right, and clearly everybody is very upset.
And that's our interpretation of why we think people are really upset about this. It's more than just the subsidies. They're upset that it didn't go through the proper channels and it was implemented within a 24-hour time frame. Right, and
it causes a lot of hardship. So they're talking about 20,000 jobs that are cut in the government, the public sector, and on top of that, the other people have to take a 20% pay cut.
And they have to work 1 day per month for free.
Yes, and bus fares are going up. Probably, I assume taxi fares will go up because the gas and diesel prices went up so much.
Yeah.
And, this impacts everything. It impacts the cost of food. It impacts the cost of
everything. Anything that needs to be transported, which is pretty much any physical item, the cost will go up to offset the increase in costs and fuel costs.
Right, and it really hurts, especially people who are already operating on surviving, making it week to week, and they're just earning a minimum wage.
So for the lower class people here and pretty much anywhere in the world that have to drive, fuel is one of the biggest expenses in their budget. And here the minimum wage in Ecuador is less than $400 per month. And so if you're talking about filling up a car with a 15-gallon gas tank for $2, that's $30, where it was $20 just last week. So that's a big increase for somebody who's making $400 a month.
Well, and those people are probably taking a lot of public transportation, and
those rates are going to go up too.
Right. So they're talking about maybe a 10-cent increase, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot when you don't make a lot of money. And a lot of times they have to take those several buses to get to where they need to go per day.
Yeah, it's not just from point A to point B. It's each bus you ride, it will cost you maybe 40 cents now instead of 30 cents. And, if you're taking 5 or 6 buses a day, that adds up.
Right. We're lucky here in Cuenca because we're able to walk, but it's certainly not like this in all the parts of Ecuador, obviously.
Or if you live further out than we do. We live
Right.
so close to El Centro, we just walk everywhere.
Right. This started last week with the bus and taxi drivers going on strike, and then a lot of other people joined in on the protests, including the indigenous people, which make up about a third of the population here in Ecuador. It's estimated that 20,000 of them marched to protest up in Quito.
Yeah, and they're really concerned that these changes and austerity measures are going to hit them the hardest because until recently, they really haven't had equal rights here in Ecuador, and so they haven't had equal access to education and job opportunities, and they're really suffering from generational poverty. And when these kind of austerity measures go into place, it hurts the lower class disproportionately compared to the middle and the upper class.
Right. They've also been fighting for land rights, water rights, and really just to eliminate a lot of the interference from the government.
I'm not sure if it's the government as much as it is the foreign meddling. They really don't like foreign banks and corporations kind of meddling in their affairs here in Ecuador, especially with the mining and the oil drilling.
Right. Understandable.
Yeah. So they've been protesting that a lot recently. And so they look at this as just another way for these foreign investors to come in and kind of control the land where their ancestors are buried.
Well, and as a couple of our friends told us, is that they were used to fighting and standing up for themselves, and they are not afraid to fight. And clearly that is the case.
Yeah. They're predicting that these austerity measures will lead to a recession here in Ecuador, as they usually do in other countries throughout the world. And the IMF is predicting a light recession, but their meddling is notoriously optimistic. When they say a light recession, they usually are really optimistic. So hopefully it's not that bad, but we're expecting with the 20,000 government jobs that are being cut, that means there are going to be a lot of people spending less money, which will lead to more job cuts in the private sector. So it really kind of has a compounding effect across the entire economy.
We can't tell you everything that's going on in the country, obviously, but we are going to tell you what we're experiencing here in Cuenca.
Yeah, these are the current living conditions here. There's no gas service, so no propane deliveries. There's no trash pickup. We've been told that the indigenous people have blocked the entrances to the propane distribution center and the trash dump, so they're unable to provide those services now.
We have water and electricity, and we are stocked up on food. We've had people tell us the Mercado has plenty of fruits and veggies. We haven't gone over there to check. We went to Super Maxi on Sunday, and it was fine. But we went over there today, and it was pretty bare.
Yeah, pretty bare. It's good to be vegan because all of our shelves were pretty much still full. The beans, the rice.
Well, I don't know. There was not a lot of beans left.
There was a lot of rice still, a lot of oats, cereals, that kind of stuff. But there was no produce, no meat, no dairy, no eggs, and no bananas. They haven't been able to get bananas in from Guayaquil.
Right. So we're all experiencing some shortage, but the government is bringing food in daily to restock.
And they're also flying medical supplies in through the airport.
Yeah, and for the gas shortage, I know that Astrogas is in negotiations to try to get
the gas deliveries going again.
Yeah, so they're just asking people to conserve.
Yeah, so we're not washing or using the dryer, and we're not washing with hot water. We're spacing our showers out. We have an induction cooktop that we brought from the States. We're using that to cook instead of our gas stove. The city is very quiet. We walked around the neighborhood today, took Daisy for a walk. The neighbors were out sweeping their porches and washing their cars. It's just like pretty much any other day, except that it's extremely quiet and there's hardly anybody driving. There's also a curfew called toque de queda, and that just means curfew. And it's, 8 to 5? 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., kind of in El Centro. It's not all over the whole city. It's mainly just around government buildings and stuff closer into El Centro.
Right. We definitely have seen a little bit more military. When we were out this morning, we didn't really see anybody, but we did see a military helicopter, and they did have Parque Calderon closed off. I think that's going to continue for a while. Yeah,
it's blocked off for about 2 blocks in every direction, so you can't even get into Parque Calderon.
If you have a trip planned within the next couple weeks, you may want to rethink that. I did see a couple posts from people on Facebook saying that the airlines were allowing them to change their travel plans, so that is good news.
Yeah, if you come here now, you're not going to be able to do a lot of things that you want to do. Most of the museums are closed. A lot of the stores are closed. It's hard to get around. The roads in and out of Cuenca are being blocked by the indigenous people. So you're not going to have freedom of movement, and most of the places are closed. So it might not be the best time for you to visit. And it also might be hard to get out once you get here.
Well, the issue is that you may not be able to get out of either Quito or Guayaquil because the roads are closed around all of the major areas. And from what we understand, from what we've read in the news, is that there's more closures up north. There's more activity going on in the Quito area.
If you have a trip planned for November or later, it's really too soon to tell if you should reschedule that. We just really need to wait, I'd say at least another week, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, we have no way of knowing, obviously, what's going to happen. But the good news is that we do feel safe. JP and I were saying that it's really calm and quiet in our neighborhood, and we were in El Centro earlier today, and we were fine. We felt safe. This morning, we went over to the University of Cuenca, which is off of Dulce de Abril, and that's one of the meeting points for the marches. This march obviously was for the students and the professors of the university.
And a lot of other people too.
Yeah, a lot of people ended up joining. Actually, there was a bunch of people that all kind of converged. And it was pretty peaceful and organized. There was a lot of people.
Yeah, a whole lot of people.
It was incredible.
Yeah, and as the university protest marched up the hill toward El Centro, they met up with an indigenous protest. And two different groups of indigenous people were protesting, like kind of the local farmers that we see around town with the Panama hats and the dresses. They were kind of leading the parade, and then bringing up the rear of the parade was, I would call them like the Andean mountain people, and they were singing songs in Quechua, we believe. And they were playing the pan flutes, and it was really a sight to see. Thousands of people.
Yeah, it was incredible. And then there was also the taxi union was there as well. So
and they met
a lot
up
of people were represented.
And we followed them all the way into El Centro, almost into Parque Calderon. And when the police started firing tear gas at the peaceful protesters, that's when we headed home.
Yeah, it was peaceful, and we felt safe. Being around all those people, we felt safe, and we feel safe in our neighborhood. We don't want to go back out there because there's a lot of tear gas. And that's what we've been reading on Facebook, was that there's more tear gas, which, of course, I'm not surprised, given that we saw tear gas. We don't want to get tear gas.
As with any protest, there's always going to be bad actors, the people who kind of infiltrate the peaceful protest and use that opportunity to loot or cause trouble or just engage in their normal criminal behavior. There's also rumors that the government has been sponsoring some agitators to enter the peaceful protests and cause problems. We didn't see any of that, thankfully. We haven't seen any of that kind of activity when we were in there earlier today.
Things were calm when we were there. There were some people running after they fired the tear gas, but everybody remained calm. When we were there, I did see a couple posts on Facebook later that there was some vandalism or something going on, but we didn't see it for ourselves, so I can't really comment on any of that.
I think that's it for this video. We're going to be posting updates every day or two while this is going on so that we'll keep you up to date. We don't think that this is cause for us to leave yet. We love it here. We love Cuenca. We love Ecuador, and we love the Ecuadorian people.
Yes,
and
we do.
we really want to stay here. We really hope things settle down and the government compromises and that there's some sort of an agreement reached that doesn't hurt the people too much. But we also understand the financial obligations under the current economic system that we're all living underneath.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but we hope it gets resolved. I'm going to continue to remain optimistic because that is who I am.
Yeah, me too. All right, now I'm going to roll all of the footage from the protest this morning here in Cuenca, Ecuador.
Bien, despacito. Viva,